This is first of all about the history of the APLTree library, how it came into being, also what has changed recently, and what I envisage as the near future. So what is the APLTree library? It's a collection of utilities useful for any Dyalog programmer when developing an application. It was originally hosted on the APL wiki, which is not the ideal place, but when I started, that was now almost 15 years ago. There was no better place anyway, so that was it. It was 100% classes, because back in those days, we all believed that object-oriented programming was the last thing we need to pay attention to. That would save the world, and nobody else would do anything else in the future, right? As usual, turns out to be a fashion. Things change, and now OO it's not dead, of course, but it's not mainstream even anymore, I believe. And also we have today other means to expose an API to the outside world and hide the implementation details, which is the main advantages of classes, right? We can do this today by other means. We moved stuff to GitHub, like so many others. And because the APLTree library grew and had not only utilities, but also complete applications in it, at one stage I split the two. So there's now the APLTree library and the APL-cation library, stuff like Fire and full-blown applications, actually, right? Doesn't fit together. The idea behind all this was to fulfill certain criteria or quality standards that make it worthwhile for a programmer to look at this. Because whenever you use somebody else's code, the challenge is it worthwhile spending time on it, acquaint yourself with it, or should I implement it myself? Now the trouble with that is, of course, that often people just think, oh, this will take me probably a week or maybe 2 days, and this is fine, I can do this myself. Forgetting that when you estimate 2 weeks, it usually is multiplied by pi or some orders of magnitude or whatever. And then there is a small issue of documenting it, a small issue of writing test cases. And writing test cases sometimes takes as much time as implementing the damn thing. Anyway, so it should be well documented, and all the stuff is well documented, I insist. It should have a test suite, of course, which gives you some confidence that it is actually doing what's supposed to do. And of course, it has to be open source, ideally a license that is as relaxed as the MIT license. MIT license means you can even sell it if you want to, if you find a buyer. Now, we have Tatin and Cider. Cider is not of interest here because it's a project manager, but Tatin is a package manager. And ideally, everything that has been an APLTree utils package in the past now should be a Tatin package. And all the members of the library project are now managed by Cider, so they are Cider projects, and they are available, can be consumed as Tatin packages. Cider and Tatin, as we already learned, thanks to Morten in the morning, are part of the 19.0 installation. All you have to do is to activate them in order to use them. And by the way, Cider itself is a Tatin package. And if you want to use it, all you have to do is say load package, and that's it. It's available straight away. And I would like to point out what the advantages of using packages are. First of all, there is dependency management. If a package is not simple, some packages do not have any dependencies and are very useful still, like, say, HTTP command. The HTTP client from Dyalog doesn't have any dependencies, so that's it. But there is, for example, the most complex thing currently is, I believe, Lagunza, which is a help system written in APL. It has countless of dependencies, and you could even argue whether it's a package or an application, because there is a kind of middle ground. It's a self-contained application in the sense of you can start it and look at the help, but at the same time it could be part of an application dealing with the help requests of a user. So it can be both. It can be an application, it can also be a package. Tatin is managing all this for us. We don't need to care about this. There's also versioning in the sense of there are easy commands to figure out what versions are available, how to update, stuff like that. There are no name clashes, because even if you want to load a package that happened to be named like something you are already using in your application, you just use an alias name and you can avoid the name clash. You can hide the implementation details by defining an API. Still, if you want to, you can look into the implementation details. Nothing prevents you from doing this. But usually, unless you are hunting a bug or stuff like that, you are absolutely happy with looking at the public interface and ignore anything else. It can be easily loaded for trying something out, and it can as easily be installed if you want to integrate it into an application. And it can be very easily updated. So I think that is a pretty convincing list for using packages. But there's a problem. How to tell the gems from the junk? What do I mean by that? Well, NuGet is the Microsoft.NET package manager. It offers right now 350,000 packages.
Actually 374,000.
Yeah. I think it doesn't matter. And if you think that is bad, NPM, the JavaScript package manager, gives you 2.1 million packages. Good luck with that. As a side note, there are packages like lowercase, which take a piece of text and do, surprise, lowercase it, which is available in version 4.1. So I'm looking forward for 5.0. Right. That problem needs to be addressed somehow, and we're currently discussing how, and so far we haven't come up with anything convincing, because every idea comes with disadvantages that are as big as the possible advantages. Could be testimonies by users. It could be that Dyalog gives it a badge if it fulfills certain criteria. Imagine if that goes wrong. Imagine how much work there might be involved in doing something like that. And you get the idea why Dyalog doesn't want to do this. There could be some sort of certification instance, or should users press a like button, as in Facebook? Or is it the number of downloads? That would be fun right now. Oh, this one was downloaded, this one not at all. It also has in every environment, there is a big problem for the newcomers, because the newcomer, by definition, has 0 downloads, of course. Any other ideas? Let me know. So, first of all, I want to discuss the changes I've performed recently due to the introduction of Cider and Tatin. FIRE, which stands for Find and Replace, is a utility that allows you to search stuff in the workspace and exchanges against something else, has been extended, and now this is how FIRE looks like. And there are 2 things that have changed. There is now an ignore references and an ignore Tatin packages. Why that? Well, references are pointing to something elsewhere, right? And if FIRE would take reference into account and you are looking for something that is found in one place and a reference points to it, it would list the reference as well. It's useless. I'm not interested in this, except in very special circumstances when a reference is created and I want to find that reference for whatever reason. But otherwise, it should ignore references. So that can be done now, as long as nobody plays foul with what it is called, the damn thing that allows you to change the name, the display name of an object, quad df. Quad df, the display format, that is what df stands for, allows you to change the name that makes an appearance in the session. So if you say in the root a is 1, and you ask a what the df is, it's a. But if you say I assign something like hash.something.foo to it, then it displays hash.something.foo, yet there's no something. So if you do something like that, you will not be happy. The advice is don't. The second thing is ignore Tatin packages for the simple reason when you consume packages in your application and you want to change something in your application, naturally, you don't want to mess around with the Tatin packages because they are written by somebody else, or even if you are the author, they are written in a different context when you open that project. So they should be ignored as well. And that's what you can do. The second thing I would like to point out is that ADOC had to be changed, but I'm not so sure whether it's worthwhile doing this, so I ask a question, who knows what ADOC is? Okay, 4, 5 people, that is not that much. I'm not giving up yet. Shall I shortly introduce what ADOC is doing?
You have 13 minutes left.
I have 30 minutes left. I skip over this. If anybody interested into what has changed with ADOC, please approach me and I tell you in detail in person. Q&L report, I should mention that as well. In the past, Fire also gave you the opportunity to search in the name list, not in the workspace, but in the name list. For example, if you have an empty namespace foo, it wouldn't show when you search the workspace, because there is nothing. If you search the name list, you would find foo. That was always available in Fire, but very restricted. You just could enter a string and it would search for that string in hash. Now you can have a regular expression. You can search either in hash or in quad SE and stuff like that. So this is a much expanded feature now in comparison to what we had before. These are the new APLTree projects that have been added to the project since I gave the talk in 2018, the last time regarding the APLTree projects. In short, code coverage gives you a report after executing a test suite, which parts of your code have been executed, tested, and which part haven't. Datetime is a second package that allows you to do gymnastics with date and time. The first one was implemented by Phil Last. This one, the new one, is implemented by David Church. We have File Plus by David Church as well, which is an extension to component files. We have an interface between GitHub and the APL session, so you can execute commands and request a list of issues and stuff like that. You can salt and hash passwords. If you don't know what it is, you don't need that. If you do, you're happy that it's there. Inno is a Windows installer, and this package is an interface between it, so it makes using Inno much easier. SMTP allows you to send emails via the SMTP protocol from within APL. SQL or SQL FNS is again implemented by David Church as an interface to anything that speaks SQL. Tester by David Church is a small and simple test framework for testing single functions. And WinSCP is an FTP client in the Windows world, and this interface allows you to execute commands from within the APL session. And then we have several zip tools, 3 of them. And finally, we have com tools. Communication tools allows you to communicate with the user from the APL session. I'm not sure whether it's worthwhile looking into this, so I ask again the question, who is actually implementing user commands? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is much less than I expected, to be honest. So I'm not going to look into this in detail. I'm just saying communication tools allow you to pause and give a piece of information to the user or request an information, a decision by the user, like a yes-no question. Are you sure that you want to whatever? Or ask a question for a piece of text, like give me your name or the number of copies to be printed, stuff like that. And it pops up in the session and asks you a question. Now that is so easy to implement that you might ask, why do we need a package for this? Well, it does a little bit more than that. Because first of all, if you just put it out via a quad output and then use quad input for the input by the user, there's a problem. You can't interrupt that. And if the next step is unwanted, you can't get around this. The com tools allow you to enter 3 JOTs, and if you press enter, it runs on a stop vector and waits for you to take action. What is more important, you can upfront assign global variables certain values that would make those functions answer the question automatically, makes the decision on your behalf automatically, stuff like that. Why would I use that? In a test case. Usually when you test a user command and the question comes up and saying, how many copies would you like? Then you need a human being in front of the monitor, otherwise your test case can't continue. In this case, you assign the variable whatever the answer is supposed to be, and it would do this. That's the purpose of com tools. I forgot to show this. This is what code coverage is doing. After you run the test suite, it gives you either a detailed or a report or an overview. The overview just says which functions are partly covered by test cases, which are completely uncovered, and which ones are 100% covered, fully covered. And these are links to the code, and whatever is bold, you need to either ignore or say it's just not worthwhile testing it, or take some action to cover it. That's the idea behind code coverage. Works well, but there are some technical issues that Dyalog needs to solve. For example, dynamic functions that are local in a traditional function. That is posing a problem because quad profile doesn't provide me the information to do anything useful with that. Last bit is the latest user commands. There are 4 new user commands: latest list objects, compare files, and snippets. In short, there is a latest user command already in the Dyalog thing. It's outdated. It doesn't work well because it simply uses the timestamp. Now the problem is dynamic functions, class scripts, they don't have timestamps. So latest these days is pretty useless. But on the other hand, we now have link, and we all settle for text files anyway. So rather than looking into the workspace, we could look at the folder where the code is stored and use the file stem. And that is exactly what this user command is doing. And that means you can not only get a timestamp for the code, you can even get a timestamp for variables. I find this extremely useful because it allows you stuff like going back to a project you have been working to, then the phone rang, an important customer had a different idea about how to spend your time. And when you come back 2 weeks later, you forgot completely what you did. If you call latest by default, it gives you all changes performed on the last day where something was changed. If you provide a numeric argument, it is interpreted as the number of hits it should return. If it is a minus negative value, then it is interpreted as the number of days where change have happened. So it's very flexible and very useful in this respect. List objects is an enhanced version of QuadNL, so to speak. It gives you, in addition, information like what is a reference, what is a namespace, what is an instance of a class, stuff like that. Compare files is an attempt to generalize an interface to comparison utilities. There are a number of very well-established ones like Comparit or Ultra Compare or WinMerge or Meld or whatever. There are countless of them. And this is an attempt to standardize an interface that allows you to use any of them as long as they fulfill certain criteria. Now, some of them don't allow you to edit stuff, others require you to edit stuff or allow you to edit stuff. And this is all dealt with in ini files where those properties can be dealt with. It's easy to enhance, and then you can, or somebody can use the API interface to use the comparison utility from somewhere else. Snippets, I'm not sure whether that is a good idea or not. That came up because there are some things that do not qualify as a package, definitely, because they are so small, like the function lowercase. Why would that be a package, right? I don't see it. It could be even a small piece of code that you type over and over again, like, I don't know, before the introduction of the new native, the function where was ubiquitous everywhere. That would be an example. Certainly not a package, but something you type over and over again. Or maybe a better example is an assert function, which usually is way longer with diamond separators, and you can easily mistype something like that. That could be a snippet. The MIT license could be a snippet. And snippet is a user command that allows you to list whatever is available, to save new snippets, or to get a snippet into the workspace, either into the clipboard or establish it as a function or whatever it is in the workspace. It's work in progress. That is not perfect. Comparison is not even implemented yet, but it's in a status where it's worthwhile looking at it and tell me whether you are interested or not. If you're not, okay, that's feedback as well. That is valuable. And the last thing to talk about is, I skipped this one, is Launchy. Launchy is something you can use to fire up an APL session under Windows. It's not available on other platforms. It's only of interest for developers that have more than one version of Dyalog APL installed. I have installed everything from 17.1, 32-bit and 64-bit Classic and Unicode. You can imagine it's a long list. So Launchy allows me to use the drop down here to select the version I want to have, and it gives you all sorts of opportunities to avoid executing the startup script or stopping in the startup script and look for bugs. Brian, create a link. You asked for this, it's available now. And in the explore and the options and edit things, you have stuff like asking for a report. How many of those JSON files for configuring the bridge are available on your machine, and even ask it to edit them in one go. So it will open edit windows with admin rights, and you can change them. Because that's what you need to do. That is a constant challenge when you play around and switch between framework and .NET Core and stuff like that. I think I managed right in time. Thank you.